This story is titled "My Parents Sold My Gaming PC Behind My Back for My Sister's Shopping Spree, so I Moved Out and Never Looked Back." Hi, everyone. Before diving into this story, a quick favor: if you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, helps support the channel, and ensures you won't miss out on our amazing videos. Alright, let's jump right in. Hey, folks. I don't usually share stories like this, but I need to get this off my chest because, months later, I'm still furious about what happened. First, a bit about me: I'm 22, and gaming, along with PC building, has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. It's not just a casual hobby, it's been a passion since I was a kid. Over the years, I've worked part-time jobs, taken freelance gigs, and saved every bit of birthday or holiday money to finally build my dream PC, a custom $3,600 rig. But it wasn't just for gaming, it was also my tool for freelance graphic design, which helped me earn some extra cash while sharpening my skills for the future. Now, let me give you a picture of my family. My parents are the classic "we know best" type, though their idea of best always seems to center around my younger sister, Tiffany. Tiffany, who's 18, has always been the golden child. Think of someone who genuinely believes the world revolves around them, that's her. She's obsessed with designer brands, trendy outfits, and all the expensive things she can get her hands on. And my parents? They go to great lengths to make sure she has it all, even if it means disregarding my needs. Growing up, it was crystal clear that Tiffany always came first. If money was tight, I was the one expected to make sacrifices. Mom would say things like, "You're older, you can handle disappointment," or, "You're a boy, you don't need as much." I got used to it and decided to focus on working hard for what I wanted. I didn't hold a grudge against Tiffany, but I also stayed out of their way and focused on my goals. Fast forward to a few months ago, it was an ordinary Saturday. I'd been out with my best friend Ethan, who's also my main gaming buddy. We spent the afternoon discussing strategies for an upcoming gaming tournament we were planning to join. When I got home, ready to hop on my PC and practice, I walked into my room, and froze. My desk was empty. My PC, monitor, peripherals, everything was gone. For a split second, I thought we'd been robbed. But nothing else in the house was out of place. Panicked, I rushed downstairs and found my parents casually sitting in the living room, sipping coffee as though it were just another day. "Where's my computer?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Mom barely glanced at me, responding nonchalantly, "Oh, we sold it." My jaw dropped. "You what? Sold it? What do you mean you sold it?" Dad, with a sigh like I was the one being unreasonable, said, "Your sister needed new clothes for an event, and we didn't have the money. So, we sold the computer. It was just sitting there." Just sitting there. My voice rose. That computer wasn't just sitting there. I worked for years to build it. I use it for work. Mom snapped, "Don't take that tone with us. We're your parents, and we did what was best for the family. Tiffany has an important event, and you can always save up for another computer." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Save up for another one? Do you even understand how much time, effort, and money I put into that PC? And what about my work? How am I supposed to meet deadlines now? What event for Tiffany could possibly be more important than my computer? Dad, in full dad mode, waved me off. "Freelance work isn't a real job, anyway. You spend more time playing games than working." That was their go-to dismissal, but I didn't care. Gaming was more than just fun for me, it was part of my life. That PC wasn't just for gaming, it was how I earned money and built something meaningful on my own. The fact that they couldn't see that, or didn't care, was a punch to the gut. I stormed back to my room, furious. I texted Ethan to tell him what happened. He was as shocked as I was. "Dude, that's insane. They didn't even ask you first." "Nope," I replied. They sold it for Tiffany's stupid event. She's so spoiled. You should have hidden the PC or something, he said. Hindsight, right? I typed back. At that moment, all I could think about was how years of effort had been erased in an instant, and no one in my family seemed to care. That night, I decided to confront Tiffany. I walked into her room, where she was spinning in front of the mirror, admiring one of her new dresses. Do you even know what Mom and Dad did to buy you all this stuff? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She barely looked at me. What are you talking about? They sold my computer, my $3,600 gaming rig, just so you could have your designer haul, I said. She shrugged, still turning to admire herself. So? It's just a computer. You can build another one. Her indifference floored me. That wasn't just a computer, Tiffany. It was years of saving, working, and building. It was my livelihood. Not my problem, she said with a smug grin. It's not like I told them to sell it. Her words, dripping with nonchalance, made my blood boil. You mentioned it, didn't you? You knew exactly what they'd do, and you let it happen. Tiffany rolled her eyes. Oh, please. Don't act like I control what Mom and Dad do. If they sold your precious little computer, it's because they thought it was the best choice. That's on them, not me. I said firmly, I built that computer with my own money. Legally, it's mine. You had no right to sell it. Mom sighed dramatically, like I was some child throwing a tantrum. We've been over this already. Your sister needed help, and we made a decision as a family. No, you made a decision for the family without asking me, I shot back. That's theft, plain and simple. Dad leaned back in his chair, his face darkening. Watch your tone, boy. We're your parents, and everything in this house belongs to us. You live under our roof, so technically, that computer was ours. That's not how it works, I said, keeping my voice steady, though I wanted to yell. I pulled out a receipt and held it up. This says I paid for the parts with my own money. It's proof that it was mine. And this, I handed them the buyer's copy of the transaction, proves you sold it for $1,200. You owe me. Mom gasped, as if I'd just announced I was disowning them. How dare you accuse us of stealing? We did this for Tiffany, she's your sister. Family is about sacrifice. Yeah, and it seems like I'm the only one making sacrifices, I snapped. Tiffany gets everything handed to her, and I'm just expected to roll with it. Not anymore. Either you pay me back, or I'll take legal action. You wouldn't dare, Mom hissed. Try me, I said, locking eyes with her. Tiffany, who had been silent until now, finally chimed in. Oh my God, are you seriously threatening Mom and Dad over a computer? You're pathetic. No, I replied, glaring at her. What's pathetic is that you're perfectly fine with taking advantage of someone else's hard work without a second thought. You knew what they did, and you didn't care. She rolled her eyes. It's not my fault they decided to sell it. I didn't make them do anything. You mentioned it to them. You knew exactly what you were doing, Tiffany, I snapped. She shrugged with attitude. I only brought up your computer because you're always complaining about how busy you are with work. I thought you'd appreciate the break. Her voice was calm, like she was the victim here. Appreciate the break? I said, my voice rising. Do you even hear yourself? That computer was my livelihood. Tiffany smirked, unfazed. Wow, you're twisting this to make it my fault. You're the one who's always bragging about being independent. I figured you wouldn't mind helping out the family for once. Isn't that what being independent is all about? My fists clenched under the table. Helping out. You didn't need a designer haul, Tiffany, you just wanted it. There's a difference. She scoffed. Maybe you're just mad because I know how to get what I want, and you're too busy sulking to figure it out. Don't blame me for being better at this than you. I swear, I almost slapped her, but Dad slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. Enough. We'll pay you back, but don't expect anything else from us. You're on your own from now on. I laughed bitterly. I've been on my own for years. The difference now is that I'm done letting you take advantage of me. The next day, they handed me $1,200 in cash, their faces tight with anger. I took the money without a word. It wasn't a victory, but it was progress. I contacted the buyer, who agreed to sell the PC back to me for the same price. Picking it up felt like reclaiming a part of myself. But as much as I loved having my rig back, I knew things wouldn't go back to how they were. My parents and Tiffany weren't going to change, and I couldn't keep living in a house where I was treated like a second-class citizen. It was time to figure out my next move. Update 2. Hey again. After my last update, I started brainstorming ways to get out. Moving out wasn't going to be easy. I didn't have a huge savings cushion, and rent wasn't cheap, but I had my freelance work, and I was determined to make it happen. I called Ethan, my go-to sounding board throughout this whole mess, and laid out my plan. Dude, you need to get out of there, Ethan said immediately. You can crash at my place for a while if you need to. Thanks, man, but I think I need my own space, I replied. I've been living under their thumb for too long. I just need to figure out how to swing it financially. Ethan was quiet for a moment before he said, what if you doubled down on your freelance work? You're good at it, and there's definitely demand. You could even start streaming again. He wasn't wrong. I'd dabbled in streaming before, but life had always gotten in the way. Now, with my PC back and a fire lit under me, it seemed like the perfect time to give it another shot. That night, I started looking for apartments. My budget was tight, so I focused on small studios or shared housing. After a few hours of scrolling through listings, I found a tiny place a few miles away. It wasn't much, just a single room with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but it was affordable and close enough to town that I wouldn't feel isolated. I reached out to the landlord, who agreed to meet me the next day for a tour. Walking into the apartment, it hit me how real this was becoming. The place was bare bones, but I wanted it. I signed the lease that day, and for the first time in ages, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The next challenge was packing up my life without tipping off my family. I didn't want a dramatic exit, but I also didn't want to give them a chance to guilt-trip me into staying. Over the next week, I started moving my stuff out a little at a time, stashing it at Ethan's place until I was ready for the final move. Meanwhile, I threw myself into freelancing and streaming. I updated my portfolio, reached out to past clients, and advertised my services on forums and social media. The response was better than I'd hoped, and within days, I had enough work lined up to cover my first month's rent. As my move-out day approached, I avoided my family as much as possible. Tiffany didn't seem to notice, she was too busy flaunting her latest designer bag on social media, but my parents were more perceptive. They started dropping little comments during dinner, like, "You've been awfully quiet lately," or, "Let us know if you're planning anything big." I brushed them off with vague answers, but I could feel their eyes on me. The final straw came 2 nights before my move. I was in my room packing up the last of my gear when Mom knocked on my door. "Can we talk?" she asked, stepping inside before I could answer. "I don't have anything to say to you," I muttered, shuffling papers on my desk. "Just hear me out," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed as if everything were normal. "You have to understand, we didn't sell your computer to hurt you. Tiffany mentioned it when we were trying to figure out how to help her. She said you didn't use it much anymore and that it was worth a lot of money. We thought maybe it was a good idea." I turned to face her, my jaw tightening. "So you're saying this was Tiffany's idea?" She sighed, looking almost guilty. "Not exactly, but she suggested it, and we thought she made a valid point. You've always been so independent, we thought you'd understand." Her words churned my stomach. Tiffany had planted the seed, and my parents had run with it. You thought I'd understand? I said sharply. Understand that you sold something I worked years for because Tiffany wanted a new wardrobe? Mom flinched but didn't respond. Instead, she stood up and left, as if her half-hearted explanation was supposed to make everything better. That's who Tiffany is, she twists things to get what she wants. She acts innocent, drops a hint, and suddenly her ideas become my parents' plans. The morning of my move came faster than I'd expected. I loaded the last of my boxes into my car and left a note on the kitchen counter. It wasn't dramatic, just a few lines explaining that I needed space to focus on myself. I didn't want a confrontation, and I knew they'd try to guilt me into staying if I explained in person. Ethan met me at the apartment to help unload. As we set up my PC in the corner of the room, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. That night, I went live on my streaming channel for the first time in months. The viewer count was small, but it didn't matter. I was in my own space, doing something I loved. Update 3. The first night in my new apartment felt surreal. It was quiet, almost too quiet compared to the chaos I'd grown used to at home. But that silence came with a sense of peace. For the first time in years, I could breathe without feeling like someone was watching or judging me. Streaming quickly became more than just a side hustle, it became my lifeline. Every time I went live, I felt connected to people who shared my interests and supported my journey. My audience was small at first, but they were loyal, and their encouragement kept me motivated. Freelancing was also picking up steam. I'd secured a few steady clients, and the financial stress that had weighed on me during my move began to lift. It wasn't easy, some nights I worked until dawn, juggling deadlines and editing videos for my channel, but it was worth it. Despite my progress, the fallout with my family lingered in the back of my mind. My parents called a few times, leaving voicemails that alternated between apologetic and accusatory. Tiffany, of course, stayed silent. I didn't respond to any of them. I wasn't ready. A few weeks after the move, Ethan came over with pizza and a six-pack to celebrate my growing success. As we sat on the floor of my tiny apartment, he asked, "Do you think you'll ever talk to them again?" I paused, considering his question. Maybe someday, I admitted. But only if they're willing to actually listen and respect me for who I am. I'm done being their scapegoat. Ethan nodded, raising his beer. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking my bottle against his. As the weeks turned into months, my life started to feel like my own again. The scars from my family's betrayal didn't disappear, but they began to fade. I focused on building my future, streaming, freelancing, and even making a few new friends along the way. One evening, after wrapping up a particularly successful stream, I received an email from my mom. It was short and hesitant, asking if we could meet to talk. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity before typing a response. Not yet. I'm still healing. But maybe one day. Hitting send, I felt a mix of relief and resolve. My life was no longer about pleasing others, it was about finding my own happiness. Epilogue. A year later, everything had changed. My streaming channel had grown beyond my wildest expectations, and I'd even started collaborating with other creators. Freelancing was steady, giving me the financial stability I'd always craved. I'd moved into a slightly bigger apartment with a dedicated office space, and my once bare walls were now covered with posters, photos, and art that reflected who I truly was. My relationship with my family remained distant but civil. We exchanged occasional messages, and while things were far from perfect, I felt no rush to mend what they had broken. Forgiveness, I learned, was a process, not a gift freely given. One evening, as I ended another successful stream, I glanced out the window at the city lights and smiled. This was the life I'd fought for, the freedom, the independence, and the ability to live on my own terms. And for the first time in years, I felt whole.